It's Tabletop and Beyond. I am your host, Justin, Dan, and we are joined by a special guest, David Carter from the Crucible of Fate. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome.
So we got in communication about 2 weeks ago. You hit me up after you saw that I posted something in the Dungeons and Dads group and said, I've got something you might be interested in. Sometimes, I'm going to be honest, David, sometimes when people reach out to me and say that, I'm like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Quite a few actual play podcasts reach out to us and say like, hey, could you want us on the show? And I was worried that the Crucible of Fate was similar to that. But I'm happy that we sat down together to talk about it, because while it is an actual play, it is definitely not your run-of-the-mill, and it's something entirely altogether different. I'm excited to talk about it today with you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to come on the show to talk about it. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, as you can see from the background, I'm not really messing around. I renovated the whole basement down here to turn it into a nice D&D gaming room that I've been dreaming about having for pretty much, well, since probably 89, 88, around there when I started playing D&D. And yeah, I really want to push the production values as high as I can with the show. And I knew coming out of the gate that there's so many people that are just trying to do a live play D&D game that I had to bring something different to the table. And Crucible of Fate certainly is different in that it's a high stakes, competitive, open invitational Dungeons and Dragons game show.
That's one of the things that really
cool.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things that piqued my interest. That's okay. That piqued my interest that you said competitive D&D, because, you know, that's not normally something that you hear. And but before week. So Dan, how was your Geek Week?
It's pretty good. I haven't been on the podcast for a little while, but I have been caught up on all the episodes I've been watching, and I really enjoyed the episode where we brought on the writer from I'm going to say it wrong. It's the German name. I forgot the name of it.
Zweihander,
yes. His first name is Dan, right? I'm sorry, I don't have my notes in front of me, but I got halfway through the podcast, and I'd been thinking about writing my own game engine for a long, long time. I had to press pause on the podcast, and I went down and whiteboarded a game engine that I thought would be fun to play, that met my design kind of objectives. And I couldn't finish the show until I had kind of the whole nutshell written. And so I've been playing around and play testing and whiteboarding, and that's been probably one of the most geekiest things I've ever done, and that's happened in the last several weeks. So more to come on that. I'll be leveraging the Tabletop and Beyond folks to help me fine-tune it, and I do have some stuff I've written to kind of to put an IP on a generic RPG system. So if I wanted to throw something out on Drive-Thru RPG, I could, but all this stuff takes work, and you all have ideas, and who knows if it's fun or not. So the trick is to get something that works. The second thing that I did was several weeks ago, my daughter and I, she's homeschooled now. She's in her early teens, and we decided to do more things at the public library, and we signed up for a roll and write game night at the Montclair Public Library in Northern Virginia. And we went and had a really nice time. There was a really great guy and his wife, and they walked us through a game called Cartographers. It was super fun. Sadly, we were the only people that were there, and they were prepared to have a group, probably, you know, they were probably prepared to have 10 or 20 people. So even afterwards, they were going to do a raffle, but they gave us a copy of the game. So I even got a free game out of just going to the library, and I've played it, and it's actually a fantastic game. It's card-based roll and write instead of dice-based roll and write. It's kind of like Tetris and building out and I don't know how to say it, Settlers of Catan. You're trying to get resources and planning your civilization. So it's Super fun. They're having another one in February. If you're in the Northern Virginia area, February 21st, there's another Roll and Write at the Montclair Library. And I told them I'd give them a shout out on the podcast. And I really have to give a shout out for anybody who will run games, either RPGs or tabletop games at public libraries. I think that's a really awesome public service. And I don't think we give folks enough credit. I know if you could walk into any random public library, you'll find a flyer for a D&D group. And that's cool. And those folks are doing great things and exposing people to the hobby and engaging young people and new players. And so I'd like to give those folks a shout out. I know there's open slots for you Northern Virginia friends of ours who I know listen to the podcast and are free on the 21st of February. So that's my Geek Week. It's been pretty geeky.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Like, I'm glad that our podcast inspired you to want to write your own, RPG system. Like, that's pretty cool. And, good job to Daniel Fox.
Yeah, Daniel Fox. I apologize, Daniel Fox. My over 40 brain ejected his name. So I'm very sorry. And Spyhander, it all just went out of my brain. But you could tell I'm focused on my own crap. You could tell. I'm really focused on my own stuff, obviously. It's the ego. It doesn't have room for other things.
Awesome. David, how was your Geek Week?
It was pretty busy. I mean, the Crucible keeps me quite busy. We film an episode in 2 parts. So, last week we finished up episode 6, part 2. And that's about 5 to 6 hours typically on my 2 out of every 3 Saturdays. I spend filming that. Watched some good TV though. I've watched all of the episodes that are out now for season 2 of Legend of Vox Machina, and I've been really digging that because I followed all through campaign 1 of Critical Role, so it's cool to see that animated. Been watching The Last of Us. Haven't gotten to this episode 3 I've been hearing so much about, but the first 2 episodes were pretty rad and pretty close to the video game. I didn't get too far, but it's triggering a lot of memories, so that's pretty neat. And then I started watching Raised by Wolves again. I watched the first few episodes when it came out, and I really dug it. And then I think I got into moving and getting married and having a baby, and I didn't have time to do any of this. So yeah, I'm back now watching season 1 of Raised by Wolves, and those necromancers, man, they are terrifying and awesome.
It is a trippy show. And I had heard that it exists in the Aliens universe.
Really?
Yeah, that it's kind of like a far distant prequel to Aliens.
Well, that's pretty cool because I just saw an article saying that Blade Runner and Aliens are also linked. So all these worlds are colliding for me.
Yeah, I mean, like these are all like Ridley Scott, like jams, right? So
yeah,
there you go.
I thought they were linked to the
in fact, I think Raised by Wolves. Yeah,
isn't the Wayland Corporation in both of those films? If I'm not mistaken,
I can't remember if it's in Blade Runner.
Yeah, I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the corporation in Blade Runner. You could be right. The old 40-year-old brain thing.
It feels right. Well, good.
This is where we need Jason.
Sounds good.
We should do research.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So according to Tor.com, yes, there is a connection between the Wayland Corporation and Blade Runner's Tyrell Corporation. So there is a connection. There you go.
It was close. I was horseshoes and hand grenades close.
That's right.
Some sort of hostile takeover.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and you'll notice that like the androids in Raised by Wolves, like when they get cut, they bleed that milky white substance, the same stuff that's in all the Aliens movies, right? So, yeah, kind of weird.
Yeah, great visually, and just the the symbology of them just putting their arms out and starting to fly and going into that, I don't know if they call it war mode or fight mode or combat mode or something, but that screaming, man, that's like haunting. And even from a far distance, how they're just making everyone cover their ears and making people explode. Well, I guess I should say spoiler alert on that in case people haven't watched it.
Right. Yeah, it's a few years old now at this point. So
yeah, I guess we're green lit to spoil that.
Get on board or catch up or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that sounds awesome, man. Like, and that's a lot of good solid TV sets. I watched this week's episode of Last of Us. It was very good. I have not played the game, and I have been like working through the game as I have been watching the show, and I kind of need to catch up with the game to see like how things played out in episode 4. But so far it's been pretty accurate source material. From what I heard, the episode 3 was like kind of a side tangent, like a lot more backstory for Bill's character, right? That you meet in the game. They kind of allude to the backstory in there, and I guess the showrunners decided to have a whole episode about backstory, right? So that's the one that everybody seems to be raving about. And let's see, I finished a book by Brandon Sanderson. I finished the Rhythm of War book. That's the one that came out like maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, something like that. And I'll tell you what, like, I love Brandon Sanderson's books. I love his writing style. I love, kind of his hopeless maybe not hopeless optimism that he has, but he has like just this like optimism about his writings that like things are always going to be fine and good, and as long as you believe, like it's a little, sometimes it's a little bit Disneylandish, especially if you compare it to like like The Black Company or some of the other like what is the garden, the Gardens of the Moon, right?
Yeah, Malazan Empire. Yeah. That's what I'm reading right now, and yeah, it's not very optimistic.
That's some pretty heavy material. Yeah, some pretty or like Joe Abercrombie, right? Like Brandon Sanderson's definitely kind of the more like plucky, like, hey, like if you just kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like things are going to work out, and even though you're experienced trial. And this book was really good. I just feel like this is book 4 of a very heavy series that he has. I think he said he wanted 10 to 12 books in this series, and each book is something like 600 pages or something like that. I mean, they're like 600-700 pages. They're like huge novels, right, that take a long time to read. And I felt like this one, book 4, got a little bit more bound to some of the characters' backstories, and I was just like finding myself slogging through some of the chapters just to be like, okay, let's get to kind of the good stuff. And like the ending didn't disappoint. Like he's a very good writer of like endings of books and things like that. In fact, he was asked to finish The Wheel of Time when Robert Jordan passed away. And so he wrote the last 2.5 books of that series to finish it out. And he did a great job doing that, right? So he knows how to do endings really well. So the ending of this book did not disappoint. It was just, there's a big chunk in the middle where I'm like, oh, okay, this is starting to slog a little bit. So it literally took me like a year and a half to finish this book. And I had read several books kind of in between then, including The Black Company and some of these other kind of heavier ones. And I'm glad I finished it. We'll see kind of how this series goes, but man, I struggle sometimes through some of these long epic books, even though they're kind of genre defining, so
yeah. The Malazan one's been tough for me. I slogged through the first half of the first book and it was rough, and then something triggered and it was just awesome from that point on. But I just find you really gotta like wade through the heavy material of those to get to the good stuff. It's all good, but you know what I mean.
I will 100% corroborate that I had to slog through the first book and push myself to finish it. But then it seemed like the second and third books, like he found his groove or he found his rhythm, and then like the story really picked up from there and got really interesting. So apparently he wrote that based on his D&D group.
Whoa. So, okay. Well, a lot of homebrew going on there. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So like a lot of that was kind of his D&D group that he turned into an RPG novel. So I think that's very interesting. And maybe that explains why the first book was a bit of a slog sometimes. And then maybe he got a better editor, or maybe something happened in the second book, right? That found his voice. So
yeah, well, one thing that really stuck out, and sorry, I know this wasn't supposed to be all about Malazan, but something that he did that I really loved was having like weapons and artifacts that are almost like their own demi-planes. And I've incorporated that into my home game, which has been great for a couple of my players who have really found themselves some interesting items to deal with. And I thought that was brilliant, just having the wielder get pulled into another place and interacting with the weapon itself. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've read those, but now that I'm finished with this Rhythm of War book, I think I'm gonna go back to read some of Joe Abercrombie's books, because I read some of them when they like first came out, and I was like, oh man, the couple books aren't coming out for in a couple of years, and like so I hadn't finished the other ones. I kind of need to start again and go through them, right? So his books are pretty meaty, but they're like ripe RPG books, so they're very good. Anyway, but yeah, sounds like we all had some pretty good Geek Week activities that we were doing. I'm sure we didn't cover half the stuff that we really did, but just the highlights this time. I didn't
go through all my impulse. I didn't go through all my impulse purchases. Justin told me to start, if I find a good deal, to add it to our Discord channel, and I'm like, yeah, here's a good deal, and here's a good deal, and then suddenly I'm clicking ship it to me right away. Like I had mentioned on Discord that I had abused and waterboarded a credit card a few too many times, but I won't take everyone through that pain and agony. They could go to our Discord and watch me be irresponsible with money.
Single-handedly turning the economy around. It's good.
Exactly. One discounted board game at a time. 160% off board game at a time.
So I will give a little bit of a plug for our Discord, and the link for anybody who's listening is in the show description of wherever you're listening to the podcast. It's also in the in the description section of the YouTube video. So if you just want to open that up, click the link, it'll take you to our Discord server. We have a lot of really great stuff there. We talk about Warcry, we talk about RPGs and video games. And of course, we've got Dan's special bargain buy channel where he'll post amazing deals on some games that he comes across. I think he's just got like an RSS feed set up that just sounds like a cash register every time a good deal shows up. And he ends up posting
trash picker when it comes. I'm such a trash picker when it comes to games. It's like, I don't need to buy a good game. I need to buy a cheap game. I need 5 of them.
Dan's walked away with some pretty good games though. Like he picked up Rise of Moloch, which is the Cool Minis or Not game, the CMON game, and I think like you put that up for a song and a prayer. I think, right?
Oh yeah. I'll regale you of my penny pitching on another day. But yeah, you just have to have your before you know it. I did better than I would have had I got in on Kickstarter. So whatever. Anyway, moving right along. So news for us today, but I do want so I am going to give us a little bit of a news section, but it's a tabletop and beyond specific news section, in that we sent out our first Patreon rewards this month. In fact, they all went out on Saturday. So as you can see on our show, if you would like to become a Patreon member, check us out at patreon.com/tabletop and beyond. We have a couple of different tiers of support that might interest you. And with the mid and high tiers, the Beyonder and Far Beyonder tiers that we have, you do get a set of complimentary dice, 6 dice that are Tabletop and Beyond.
that are pretty awesome. So we've already had our guys display some pictures that they used them in various games that they had throughout the weekend. So it was awesome to see our Beyonders using those Patreon dice. You also get access to monthly digital rewards, including a Warcry branching quest chain. You also get this month's RPG that we had. It's called To Grandmother's House We Go. Jason wrote this. It's kind of a fun take on Red Riding Hood. And it was originally written for the Shadow of the Demon Lord RPG, but we repurposed it for 5e. And we put it up on Drive-Thru RPG, but we are also sending it out through our Patreon rewards. So you can get it in both places, which is pretty awesome. So check us out at patreon.com/tabletop and beyond, and see if there's a level that would be right for you. We appreciate any support that you could give us, because that's what helps fuel the show and gets us great guests on the show like David Carter. So thank you, everybody, for helping us out. We definitely appreciate it. So let's get to our main topic here. And so what we have come to talk about is the Crucible of Fate. Now, David, as I mentioned in the beginning, you said, hey, this is kind of an actual play podcast, but it is competitive D&D. And that's really what got my antenna twitching, because normally what you tell your players at the table is, hey, we're all in this together. We're all sitting at the same table. You guys are working towards a common goal, and I, as the DM, am merely facilitating this story or this journey down the river that we are floating together, right? We don't want an adversarial relationship. We don't want to try to kill you. That's not my main goal. If it happens, it happens. And we definitely don't want players conspiring against each other and taking each other out. But David, you are turning this on its head, and I think it can work. So tell us about Crucible of Fate.
So everything you just said, and I was paying attention, all of that is the opposite of what Crucible of Fate is about.
Awesome. Yes.
So as I mentioned, I describe it as high stakes, competitive, open invitational Dungeons and Dragons game show. And I mean, it's high stakes because literally every roll counts in the game, and it could definitely be your last. People have to be very careful with the type of characters they make and make sure it matches with the strategy they're going to take during the game. Otherwise, you know, you're in for an uphill battle. It's competitive because, every episode we have 6 people on, and only 3 characters will survive every episode and move on to the next round. Open invitational because anyone can apply. I'm not screening anyone out unless they have a really bad internet connection and it's, you know, too difficult to play with them. But I wanted Crucible of Fate to be the everyman's game show, not just you know, voice actors and people that are kind of trained in this stuff. I want everybody to be able to come on to a show and then be able to watch it later and, you know, show their family and show their friends and get them to apply as well. So that's kind of like the tagline explained, but the overall structure of the game is that I'm going to have 120 total contestants enter. Round 1 will be 20 episodes with 6 contestants in each. And as I mentioned, 3 of them will die in every episode. So during each episode, these 6 contestants play 3 mini games. One of them is called Hunter and Hunted, where in round 1, they'll be level 3 or 4, depending on whether Hunter and Hunted comes first or second. And they'll go into a zone that they have no idea what's waiting for them. And so far, it's been things like an adult black dragon, a death knight, a tomb king, a lichen lich, all at level 3. So it's not meant to be fair at all. In fact, everyone has to do everything they can to simply survive. And I always kind of compare this to that scene in Walking Dead where they're running away from the zombies and one of the guys shoots the other one in the leg, and he's the one. That's what you have to do in Crucible of Fate.
Give him something to eat. Here's bread.
That's right. So yeah, 20 episodes in round 1. After that kind of culling is finished, we'll get into round 2 where there's 60 people who are going to be level 6. Because after like Hunter and Hunted, the survivors would go back to this Fate's Hand Tavern, which is like the set of the game show down in the abyss. They have an opportunity then to level up, do things like have a short rest, go into a parlay circle where they can invite other contestants into Zoom chat rooms secretly to conspire with one another against the other contestants. And so no one has any idea what's being said behind their back.
That's awesome.
Then the second game begins in the episode, which typically is, Hunter and Hunted, like the one I just explained, or Escape the Room, which is something like The Cube or Saw, or just some horrific room where all of the contestants are in there together and they have a certain amount of time, typically around 5 rounds, to try to find the exit and get out. Quick example, in episode 3, at the beginning of it, they were all in this room that was kind of hovering, and then it started to free fall from 10,000 feet. So they had 5 rounds to find a way to exit this free falling room, and anyone left inside was pancaked. After those 2 games, the last game is always split the party, where usually 4 people remain. And that's where it's just a straight PvP to take out one more person for 3 to survive. And usually by that time, there's like a pair or maybe a set of 3 that have decided that they're going to all turn on one person. And, and that happens. Yeah. And sometimes it's, amidst a bed of lies where, you and I are in this together. Don't worry, my friend, I've got your back. And then the game begins and all of a sudden there's a knife going through someone's ribs from behind. And I never know what's going to happen. And that's what's so wonderful for me, is just to watch the chaos kind of ensue. And my character is the host. So I kind of do the host, and then I'm the killer DM, because I'm still the dungeon master of the game. And I've used the moniker killer DM because I'm killing 3 PCs every game, which I struggle with.
You struggle with it? Why? It's just not the way you've been doing D&D for all these years?
Yeah, and I like to think I care for my players. I mean, my home games, I work my ass off to give them a really engaging game and a story that's based on their backstories, and I try to weave it together as best I can. And in this, I meet someone before the game, like maybe a week before the game. I get to know them a little bit, enough that I like them, and then we get in the Crucible and I'm like throwing a Hellfire orb from a Death Knight at them when they're level 3, and it just feels wrong and icky. But it's fun.
You've been you're all caught up on the Hunger Games, I take it. You're all caught up on that, Laura, right? A lot of this feels very similar.
Yeah, so Hunger Games was a big one. Survivor was a big influence, and then Squid Game is what I was watching when my wife was pregnant, and I was dreaming up this thing. And I was trying, as soon as I saw Squid Game, I was like, okay, I've got to find a way to turn this into a D&D show. And that's kind of where the wheels started turning.
That's amazing. Yeah. I have a ton of questions for you.
Yeah.
But keep explaining, because I know you've got a lot to cover.
So that's kind of like round 1. That's the way it goes down. 20 episodes, 6 people in each, only 3 walk out. Then we get into round 2, there's 60 people left. They're all level 6 and they do the same thing. So because the creatures are so powerful, I mean, I think the weakest one I've had so far was a beholder, CR13. Those creatures all have their own backstories in my homebrew world, which this is a part of. And so even though the characters kind of get slammed into them randomly in round 1, someone's going to fight that same beholder in round 2. This time the group will be all level 6 and level 7. Maybe they'll be successful, probably not. But round 3, I expect the groups to start winning these hunter and hunted games. And by then, everyone will have seen Escape the Room once, so they know how the room works. They can plan for it, and hopefully they'll be successful. Because if they manage to kill the creature in Hunter and Hunted or escape the room, then that's the only way to get treasure and magic items and things like that. And in this environment, you find a treasure chest. Okay, great. First of all, how are you going to split that treasure? Because these are not your friends. And how are you getting it back to the tavern? Because 10,000 gold is not light. So there's a few things that are normally hand waved out of a normal D&D game that become kind of interesting in a competitive environment. And so then they level up, then they have magic items and some money that they can spend at the gift shop. The gift shop has everything that's in the player's handbook and the sane magic item prices PDF that everyone knows about. Thank you to whoever wrote it. I don't know who that was. Maybe you guys do. But I allow that in the game. Or if they have no money, they can buy homebrew items from the gift shop by rolling on the Wheel of Consequence. And the Wheel of Consequence, if you're going to get a tier 3 item from me, let's say, which an example would have been any armor, but it's +2 and it has resistance to a damage type. So pretty advantageous in a competitive environment. That would cost you 3 rolls on the Wheel of Consequence. And some of the consequences are things like you're poisoned or blinded or deafened, and unless you happen to be in a group with a cleric who really likes you, that can really mess you up. So there's a bit of a risk reward thing going on with the gift shop. And then, the groups just get smaller and smaller until we get down to the final 6. And then it's a matter of the show is meant to have one champion. And if you watch the episodes, you'll see that the host, whose name is Theramgul, who is a demon prince, he's the one running the show, and he's looking for the general of his armies to invade the material plane. So he wants it just to come down to one person that's going to lead the armies. But hey, maybe a group of 6 level 15s might have a different intention and might turn on him. So I have no idea what's going to happen in the show, but that's kind of the basic framework of it. I can keep going, or
no, I noticed on your website there's a cash reward in real life with real money that people can earn, that the final champion will earn for playing the game. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So I'm putting $1,000 up of my own money for the winner, or split amongst the winners. Interestingly enough, I ran into a bit of a problem with some Facebook groups not letting me advertise for the show because they think I'm breaking international gambling laws. And I'm like, well, there's no ante, guys, so no one can lose any money. So how is it gambling? But I think that perhaps they also think that D&D is not meant to be competitive and just don't want me posting in their Facebook group. But
well, you can't innovate without breaking a few conventions here or there.
Yeah.
I think this is really innovative. I'm excited to hear about it. Are you still accepting applications? Have you filled out your 120 dance card yet?
No, I haven't. So I'm filled up until the end of episode 13, which is up until July.
Wow.
But yeah, I still have about 30 to 40 spots open. And I'm certainly willing to accommodate people's schedules and move some folks around who are willing. So yeah, by all means, anyone who wants to apply, you're welcome.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I apologize, David.
No, go ahead.
I have a lot of questions about character creation. You've decided to start at level 3, and we've skipped level 1 and 2 because obviously in 5e, a character really doesn't start humming until you get to at least level 3.
Yeah.
Is that correct? It just
yeah, exactly. And I wanted every class to kind of hit that path, or oath, or you know what I mean, domain.
Yeah. Because you can min-max at level 1, and then who cares? And you've made choices that worked at level 1, and then nothing fits together at later levels, maybe, or something along those lines.
Yeah, and a few more hit points, just so people might be able to take a hit or two before they go down. And it also differentiates all of the characters, just so it's not as kind of generic if we started at level 1.
Yeah. Now, I've noticed that because you're leveling up very quickly, if I'm not mistaken. By the end of an episode, you've gained 3 levels.
Yeah.
Right. And how many hours of gameplay is that? 2 or 3?
A full episode is probably around 8 hours of gameplay, but we split the episode up into 2 parts, and then we cut out a lot of the junk, but we don't cut out all the junk. There's a lot of table talk and things like that were interesting for one reason or another. But yeah, you're right, people level up extremely quickly. So if you were to win this whole thing, you only need to survive 5, maybe 6 episodes, and you could end up at level 15 after playing 5 times.
Do you see certain classes and certain builds working in the competitive format in different ways than they would in a collaborative format? So for instance, you're forming a group and everybody's like, well, I want to be the paladin and I want to be the cleric, and everybody just kind of finds a niche, right? And you kind of compensate for each other's weaknesses in a way. Oh, who's the healer? Who's the face? Whatever. In this scenario, it's different, correct? Do you find that certain builds players feel more safe going into a competitive environment versus one where it would be a higher risk to take a certain player class into the competitive arena?
I mean, there's some classes I'm seeing a lot, but I'm also attracting players that have been playing for 20, 30 years. And also I've had a few first timers. It's an incredible mix of experience levels. And so I think that influences the class choice, because they're not all min-maxers that are looking for like the most robust build in a PvP setting. Some people are just like, I really want to be a Shadowkai rogue, and so that's what I'm going to do. Then I've got other people that have their character planned out in D&D Beyond from like level 1 to 19 already, and they're just waiting to win so that they can delete the older version and get on with it. I'm seeing a lot of paladins. I expected a lot more moon druids, but I play Thermghoul, the host, and he's a bit of a dick. Like he'll say things like, if you start seeing moon druids, you should probably gang up on them and take them out now, or like just trying.
He's not worried about putting his thumb on the scale.
Not at all. Wow. And he's always saying, things like, it's great that you're working together as a team, but you realize by the end of the night, one of you is going to stab the other. Like these are not your friends. And it's just so much fun to pick at the players while they're already stressed out. They have no idea what's coming. They have no idea what the people they're playing against are plotting and doing. And then Thermghoul just gets to grind at them, which is fun.
Now, I'm assuming that you're running something. I'm assuming that you're running real tight rules as written, very kind of strict by the book D&D, especially if there's money on the line and it's competitive. And I'm sure you have players that maybe have house ruled something for a million years and think they know where it is in the DM guide, but it's actually a house rule. How do you help players? And I know you mentioned you had some newbies, but I'm sure you've got some folks with a lot of miles on the odometer who believe they know the rules better than they actually do. How do you help those players through that, especially in a competitive space?
So first thing first, it is rules as written wins, except if it's a house rule for the show. Because I've had to introduce some house rules to kind of make things a bit more interesting. But yeah, raw always wins, and I'll watch the episode afterwards and I pick out the mistakes. I've got other people reviewing the show to catch my mistakes.
Wow.
Also during gameplay, I say to everyone, look, I have no ego about this. If you tell me I'm wrong, great. Let's go to the internet. Let's find the right answer and let's move on. I would rather have it be right than have me be right. You know, like I don't care. So every time we move on from someone's turn, it's kind of like, are you good? Yeah, you're good. Okay. Then you're agreeing that your turn is finished and you're happy.
Yeah.
You know, maybe something will come up. So twice now, I've had to bring someone back because after reviewing the tape, like one time I called a death saving throw. He rolled an 11, and for whatever reason, I said it was a fail. I think because I was thinking of a saving throw from the creature they were fighting, which was a 19. Yeah. And no one at the table caught it. And so I brought him back for the second part of the episode because, you know, it was my fault.
Yeah, that's fair. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I'm really trying to maintain the integrity of the show and also present myself, even though I'm killing PCs, everyone is suffering the same level of complete and utter unfairness together.
Well, that's interesting when you talk about exactly when you talk about fairness. I think sometimes, you know, DMs and GMs, when we get pushed against the wall, we're kind of trying to get, you know, to mix metaphors, get the train back on the tracks. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have to use fiat and say, hey, I'm the GM here. This is how the story is going to go. Boom, fiat. You know, I don't have to show you that page of the book. It's there, but I get to be the final arbiter. How often as a producer, director, game show host, plus DM, have you had to go to the fiat wall and say, because I said so?
Not as often as you might think, but I'd say probably half a dozen times per episode. Something will come up that I just have to make a bit of a call on. But yeah, you know, I mean, again, I'm not trying to say I'm an expert, but I've been playing D&D for quite a long time. I've only been playing 5e, well, since about 2014, but over the pandemic, I was playing a lot of it. And
you came out in 2014. You're right on time. I mean, we played it in Gen Con. They're like, hey, new edition. And we're like, we'll give it a try. That's great. That's great.
Yep. So, you know, occasionally I've got to make a call and I just explain it as I'm doing it. And as long as I'm getting a lot of this and not a lot of this, then we're doing okay.
So one of the questions that I have is, are there classes that you are not allowing? Like maybe some of the unearthed arcana or some of the, you know, net classes, you know, meaning that people have found a net that is like kind of stupid broken. Is there anything that you don't allow or that you've kind of tamped down on?
So for season 1, I did restrict the source books that are allowed, and those are listed on the website under rules. So I've stuck to the kind of what I call the core books. So, you know, Player's Handbook, DMG, Tasha's, Xanathar's. I think I'm missing one of the major ones. And then also allow races from things like Mordenkainen's monsters and Volos. And what I've kind of blocked out is the purely Forgotten Realms stuff, all of the Magic the Gathering source material, and I no Eberron, no Critical Role. I'm just trying to keep it the generic kind of central stuff, if I can even call it that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't have a reason why. I just
well,
no, I think you got to draw a line.
It kind of, there's less random stuff. I mean, there's, first of all, by eliminating 5 or 6 books, that's 5 or 6 books. You're not book diving in the middle of a game saying, well, wait a minute, how does that special combo work? And you're like, oh, lo and behold, there it is. But I have no other reason to pull that book off the shelf except to adjudicate your special combo.
Yeah, and I give myself a bit of slack. Like, there's no way I can remember like 120 contestants' characters and backstories and all their abilities. And for episode 1, I had this dry erase board that was like perfectly made with everyone's hit points and armor class, and I was expecting I was going to be filling out their spell slots. And then when the game started, I didn't even look at it once. Like, it was just too much going on.
Yeah.
And so the audience, I refer to them as the eyes of truth. So everyone is allowed to comment and say, hey, at this point in the game, this wasn't right. This player cheated, or, maybe not cheated is a strong word. They incorrectly used their character. And we're developing a system for some punishments. Maybe it might get to the extreme where someone is kicked out, but it might just be, okay, you'll have disadvantage on your next attack, or something like that.
And some of those are bookkeeping problems, like how many times did you use that spell slot, and oh wait, did you get which rest did you get, and all that stuff. And as a player, sometimes if you're not used to keeping good book, and you guys have had a sloppy home group or whatever, where long rest, short rest, who cares? But it seems like in this scenario, when you're gonna use Fireball, you're gonna use Fireball, and it's planned, and you're not gonna everybody will know, and did you get your material components out, or did you have an arcane focus? And I guess all that stuff really has to come into play in real ways.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of things that I used to hand wave in my games, and my DMs when I was a player used to do it. We never really dealt with spell components or even like what items were currently in your hand. It was like, oh, I want to use my longbow now. So on that turn, you just like pull out your longbow and use it. And then the next turn, you've got your sword and shield in your hand. So now we have to be very careful. Okay, what do you have in your hands? Are you stowing something? Are you drawing something? Are you getting something out? So yeah, there's a lot more bookkeeping, but I trust my players and I trust the audience, because I just can't handle it. Like, running the show by myself is a lot, and there's no way I can run people's characters too.
Yeah, how much interaction with the audience do you typically get? And I'm assuming it's not a live show, because you're doing 8 hours, then you have to edit it, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And so you're going to have people leave you feedback post hoc about how that show went down. Mm-hmm. What kind of numbers are we talking about? How big of a group is this?
So right now on YouTube, I have 947 subscribers, which... yeah, I'm really, really happy with that. I mean, I just started in September, so it's been 5 months, and the people that I've attracted seem to be very passionate. Even though it's competitive, they're very friendly group. And like our Discord server, I never expected community to be the thing that would be most valuable out of this to me. And it has just been amazing. I mean, you guys mentioned your Discord. It's phenomenal just to see people kind of come to your idea and want to be a part of it. So yeah, my Discord community is always watching every episode. We actually like live watch it on Tuesday nights together, and I try to attend that every time.
Wow.
We just talk about the rules there. I mean, there's so many things that come up about the rules between each episode that we have like rules discussion channel on our Discord forum, and people will ping me and I'll try to answer as best I can. But I'll say like, well, what do you guys think? I mean, you're a player, you're a contestant. What do you think the rules should be? So yeah, it's a really interactive environment. And then there's just people posting comments on YouTube that so far I haven't had anybody be rude, which is so weird for the internet.
Yeah. Quick, knock on wood. We got to knock on something. We don't want to ruin your whole show. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Good for you, man. That's really positive. And you know, I just keep thinking that D&D is a game. It's a role-playing game, but it's also a game. And traditionally, kind of prior to D&D, games had winners and losers, right? And real winners, real losers. And I think you've kind of brought in that like strand of DNA that maybe got sloughed off, you know, when Gary Gygax went from historical simulations to role-playing. But I think it's really fascinating. I'm sorry for the audio. I clicked on your YouTube page and your video started rolling. So
Yeah.
Heard my mic pick up some audio. I'm like, oh, quick, press pause. I'll listen to this. I'll watch this later. So yeah, I just subscribed as we were talking. So
awesome. Yeah, no, I'm trying to make that final push to 1,000. You know, because it's just a milestone that I had set for hopefully the first year. But if I can get it in 6 months, then that's awesome. Just a couple more things before I forget. So there's so many spells and abilities in D&D that are so amazing when you're playing a home game and you're fighting a bunch of monsters or NPCs or what have you, and you're working together as a team. But when you see them in a competitive light and you're casting them on other players, it's so different. Like hold person in a competitive environment where like 3 or 4 people are just paralyzed.
That's dark.
Oh yeah. Or darkness. You know,
oh yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden, if you've got Devil's Sight and you throw up darkness and no one dispels it, I mean, you're just ruining people. And there's just so many exciting things that happen in the game that they're just exciting. You know, like I had a black dragon and I thought, okay, the first time I breathe acid on someone, that's going to be the end of the game. And I roll randomly to determine who I'm going to attack so that there's no favorites in round 1. So I roll a die and whatever that comes up with, that's the character that's going to get attacked. And I happened to land on this guy who had the shield mastery feat, and he was in darkness, so he couldn't see. The dragon breathed acid on him, but he made his save, and with shield mastery you take 0 damage. So a level 3 had an adult black dragon directly hit him while he was in complete darkness. And it's just an epic moment, you know.
Wow.
He just kind of, you know, ducked behind the shield, and then the dragon's breath didn't reset for me, so the fight kind of went on longer. And what like epic moments every episode because of these things that happen, like fireball and invisibility.
Yeah.
So many cool abilities.
Do you ever see players when they start doing that? And I haven't watched the show yet, but I'm excited to. So I'll admit that I'm a total noob, and hopefully this our show will get you your last 13 subscribers that you need. So come on, Tabletop and Beyond fans, get on there. Go to Crucible.
52 at this moment. I think.
Is it 50? Oh, it's all right. That's right. It would be 13 to 9.
We can do it.
950. So we can do it anyway. Nonetheless, is player versus player aggro a thing that bubbles up? Are people pretty good at biting their tongues and they go into it knowing it's competitive and they're all grown-ups about it? Or in some cases, do you have people who have a hard time kind of managing their own personal charisma saves to get through the session?
Hey, look, part of winning this game and surviving it is your own personality as a player. If you come in talking trash and just saying a bunch of ridiculous things, like you're going to get ganged up on and killed in the show. And you brought that on yourself by being a jerk. But if you're nice to everyone and you stay in character and you have a really cool character concept, people are drawn to that. And then they want to team up with you. And if you're really I can't say a good role player, but someone who's enthusiastic about the game and their character, it draws people in. And, episode 4, I had a guy, his whole thing was he came down and when he did his character introduction, he looked at Therampgul and said, I am here as a representative of the law of material plane, and we are charging you with conspiracy to murder and blah, blah, blah. And so he's in the show to kill the host, and
nice.
Yeah.
Baldly.
And then I find when, I want people to stay in character as much as possible and not metagame. And if you're trash talking as your character or conspiring, you best make sure that you win, because if both you and your target survive to the next round, they're going to watch the show afterwards and they're going to know what you did. And once people know that you're not reliable or trustworthy, you're making it harder for yourself in the later rounds. And I'm already seeing a ton of that. And it's awesome because it's
That's
so
like
organic.
classic Survivor. When I remember when Survivor first came out, we're like, oh my gosh, did you see what they did? They had an alliance and they didn't have an alliance. So here it is in D&D form. That's pretty great.
Yeah. Diplomacy is the other game that I forgot.
Yeah.
Diplomacy is definitely a big part of the game. Yeah.
You mean the board game
So
diplomacy or yeah, okay.
Both, but I meant the board game. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool. Oh, we're tracking. Justin's trying to get a word in edgewise. I'm trying to talk over him as much as he can because he's our host, and I'm trying to drag this out.
No, it's all good. One of the questions that I had, and it kind of relates to what you're talking about here, is can you give us some sense of the statistics? And I know you probably don't have like hard stats right now, but like, are certain classes doing better right now than others? Like, are clerics like a commodity in the game that everybody's treating well, or do they want to like kill them now because they might become too powerful in the game in the future? Or like, what are some trends or some stats that maybe you're seeing from character creations or the way that people are playing? Or and kind of a second part to that is, do you see certain classes that you're seeing right now projected to do, and you don't have to tell me which ones, but projected to do well, or that you think are going to like peter out in the next round because the scenarios coming up, they're just not suited to them? Do you see those kind of trends as well? Again, you don't need to tell me classes because I don't want to spoil creation for it in the future, but I'm curious about trends that you're seeing.
There's definitely some classes that are getting played more than others. I can't say whether they're doing better. The luck of the dice and the personalities and the teamwork really does make up for any potential benefits of like certain classes. Down the road, obviously, if a wizard gets to level 15, people are in a world of hurt. Like clerics too, they start banishing people and things like that. You're just out of the game from one spell, right?
Whoops,
Finger of death. Like, it's pretty epic. By the time this comes out, the episode will have aired. So, I gave out a Vorpal sword in the gift shop. So someone's walking around with like a Vorpal, like +3 greatsword. And, the first time he rolls a 20, like someone's head's coming off.
Yep. And that's what the game is. Somebody's got to die. And it could be you. If we're doing Highlander and there could be only one, there can be only one, right?
Yeah, and I've tried to make every single step of the character creation process and gameplay as nerve-wracking and painful as possible, because you have to decide what class and race you're going to take through this, or species, I guess I should say now, that you're going to play throughout the whole thing. Then you need to decide how you're going to interact with other people. Are you going to try to, be straight up and like lawful good and save people? Or are you in it for yourself? Are you going to go to the gift shop and take the risk on the consequences and buy these items that are they're all relevant to the game and they're all helpful, but you know, maybe you get poisoned or deafened or blinded. So there's risk and reward every step of the way. And one thing that I included in the game, which I can't believe I forgot up until now, is every player gets 6 fate spheres that have to last them throughout the entire campaign. These fate spheres can be used at any time. It's not an action, not a bonus action, just any time. They just have to like say the word, I want to use a fate sphere. They can give themselves advantage on a roll. They can use it for a re-roll. They can give another player a re-roll, like forced. They can give another player's roll disadvantage. They can use it to soul bind with another character so that you move through the rounds together if you survive. But if if one gets killed, the other one gets 2 levels of exhaustion. So there's a risk there too. And then the other thing they can do is you can initiate a social roll with them. And what I've done with that is, if you want to use deception, persuasion, or intimidation against other contestants, you have to burn a fate sphere. But if you intimidate them, they have to act scared of you. And if you persuade them, they have to do what you say. So high charisma characters, enchantment wizards, bards, paladins, I mean, you could make your way through the game through social abilities.
Wow.
Which I think is really interesting. No one's really, I don't think we've had a social role get used yet, but it's there.
I think what is interesting about this is that it sounds like, you know, you said you've got 3 rounds per episode, right? Which whittles 6 contestants down to 3 type of thing. And, you know, I'm assuming this is what you're doing because you've so thoroughly prepared through all of this, but I'm assuming that the challenges that they all face aren't weighted towards strength or charisma or dexterity or intelligence, like it is evenly across the board. So if I really min-maxed out a barbarian, I could be hurting on a challenge that required some dexterity or wisdom or something like that, right? And so you almost, when you're doing your character creation, don't want those dump stats because that could come back to bite you. Or you could just luck of the draw not face one of those challenges, right? I mean, like, I guess of what you could.
Yep. Totally. And they never know what monster that they're going to fight in Hunter and Hunted. And the escape rooms are very, very different. Like the most recent one, they started Escape the Room. The host very sarcastically told them all when they were going through the portal to take a deep breath. And they started the Escape the Room submerged underwater, manacled to the wall, with creatures coming in to attack them, and all they had to do was get to the other side of the room and get through a portal. But they had 5 rounds, and they start the game drowning and manacled to the wall. So it's intense, right? Because right off the bat, you feel. I mean, I had to make some changes because you can't drown in D&D in 5 rounds. So I had a creature puncture their lungs, and so every round it would drain 1/3 of their air, and then, you know, I had some people cast spells that had verbal components. And so as soon as you do that, you lose all your air. And so, yeah, like it's nasty. Like it's stressful and nasty. And yeah, people can't plan for every contingency. But I also give everyone a welcome gift from the hosts. And it was shocking to me how the dice rolled in their favor, because at the beginning of the episode where I knew it was going to be a water room, 1 person got a cap of water breathing, 2 people got potions of water breathing, and 1 person got mariner's armor. So, which made it even more interesting.
That poor 5th and 6th guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in the intro to that episode, you hear one of them say, well, can I just use my movement to pull myself out of the manacle? And I'm like, yeah, sure. But your hand will be broken and you can no longer use it if you're going to do it that way. But it's an option. And right now you have none. So
I don't know. I'm so intrigued, David. I'm so intrigued. I kind of want to watch it, kind of want to play it, and kind of want to tell the war stories of what horrible things happen, and then have other people on the internet watch horrible things happen and go, "Oh, you were such an idiot, Dan. Why didn't you do this?"
You should definitely come on the show. Yeah, for sure.
I will apply, and you can decide whether or not you will green light us based on applications and versus our getting together on the podcast. I certainly wouldn't want to elbow anyone out that would be a better fit for the show than me.
Understood. But if you love D&D as much as I do, chances are you're probably going to get accepted.
Well, cool. Well, I definitely will, on behalf of Tabletop and Beyond, at least throw my hat in the ring, and I will socially put pressure on Justin and Jason, who also are our other co-hosts, to do the same.
Yeah. Well, you're all welcome. That's for sure.
I sure would love to shiv Justin.
Yeah, I've got some. Oh, yes, he would. Yes, he absolutely would.
When we do one shots now, I'm just looking for, and I'm GMing, I'm just looking for an opportunity to just kill Justin and get him off the table. We were playing Star Trek
Every
Klingons.
time.
I'm like, okay, you're dead now. There's the door. Be gone. And he says he loves it.
And I literally got up and.
Sorry, you cut out there, buddy. You've got some internet connectivity.
Oh, sorry.
Issues. You silent out. You got up and you did what?
Fortunately, I got up and walked away as soon as you killed me.
That's right. You got other better things to do than to game with me. So anyway, I think, our egos are not so fragile. I think we could probably take a licking and smile about it and keep going. But I say that now, but as a 40 some odd year old man to have a whippersnapper wail on me in D&D after playing all these years, I may not be able to keep my cool.
Hey, like I said, it's been a mix. I mean, I've had a couple of guys that have been playing since the 70s and on the same episode as those who've been playing for under a year. Or I had someone, it was their third time playing D&D.
Why would you do that to anyone, David? Why would you?
Because I'm the killer DM.
We want people to stay in the hobby. You know that, right? Maybe, I don't know.
No, I've been... they all told me that they felt like everyone was very patient with them and that we helped them, and it actually kind of cemented their interest in the hobby, even though it was a very unique environment. And I mean, so far on my channel, I've only been putting out episodes of the show, but I also wanted to get into things like insight checks, where I just kind of talk about process. Because for me, I struggled with the fear of rejection, right? And anyone who's DM'd has thought, well, can I produce this adventure? Can I sell this book? And, when my son was born, I just kind of wanted to have this as like a living example he can watch when he's older, to say, like, even though I'm an introvert and I've never been on camera before and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I can't let myself be the one that stops this from happening. At least you got to put it out there. And I know that there's a ton of people that procrastinate on getting an adventure made and submitted to the DM's Guild or wherever, and just kind of want to give some tips and tricks for stopping the procrastination and getting on with it.
That's great. I think that's and that's life skills that you can use in 20 other ways. You can say, hey, I'm at a point where I need to do the next thing. I need to get to the next juncture in my life. And I think that's fantastic. I do have some questions about your decor. You said this was your dedicated game space. I see some lovely wainscoting coming up from the floor. That looks like real wood to me, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And you have a brick treatment up on your wall as well?
Yeah, it's granite veneer, so it's an 1.5 inch thick real granite. There's 5.6 tons of granite in here in my basement.
Wow.
Here, I'll just do a quick pan with the camera.
I'm so fascinated by this. As a wannabe part-time builder guy, I want to know this part too.
Well, I didn't do any of it. I just helped
Okay.
plan it, and then
Good.
had people that knew what they were doing.
That helps a lot. Yeah, I've never worked with granite. That's awesome.
Okay, here, I'll just do a quick little pan of the room. Hopefully this isn't too choppy for you guys. So this is my battle board I made for the show.
Okay.
We use real minis.
Very good.
So I've got where's my
I was going to ask you about minis. I'm glad you showed us that. That's great.
So the camera focuses on the board, and then the board like can spin around.
Okay.
And it's on wheels, so I can pass it around the table if I have local players.
Oh, wow.
And then, whoa. Okay. So the Fate's Hand Tavern is the place in the game where it kind of takes place. And so this is going to be the Fate's Hand Tavern. But I don't have the bar in yet, but that's where it'll be back there. And then,
nice.
The bookcase is actually a secret door into the other part of the basement.
Oh, whoa. Nice.
And then that's the door into the other part. My little writing room, which is a bit of a mess right now. And then there's a TV behind me.
And that's a pretty serious throne that you have procured for your game room. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, I look, as a 45-year-old man, I wanted to treat myself now that I'm in my forever house, and I'm committing to, I just love Dungeons and Dragons. I think about it all the friggin' time. It's like consuming for me, probably to an unhealthy level, clearly. And aside from my family, it's my favorite thing in life, and for me, being a DM, I want it to be how I express myself to people, and my players in my homebrew campaign know how much care I put into it. And then hopefully now people can see that I'm trying to bring something innovative and different that they can all share and partake in, and join the Discord server and hang out and, just, I don't know. Just
that's great, man.
Be a part of it.
That's really fantastic. I think I'm really excited by what you shared with us. Thanks for coming on the show and giving us a peek into what you're doing and how you're, evolving the hobby in a new and interesting and different way. And I just thoroughly applaud you for what you've accomplished so far. It's really, really remarkable.
Well, thanks very much. And I can't express how thankful I am for you bringing me on the show. I really appreciate it. And it's been awesome talking with you guys.
You bet. You bet. Yeah, one real quick question. I know I'm taking all of Justin's time. You mentioned locality. You invite contestants locally. Are you allowed to say your locality online, or would you prefer not to mention that?
Well, I'm in Ottawa.
Oh, Ottawa. Okay.
In Canada, yeah. And most of the people that have come into the basement to play have been friends of mine. I really have to get to know people before I invite them into my home.
If randos come into the house, your wife's like, "You've taken this too far. No randos, please, no randos."
Yeah, I don't need the irony. No, I'm not even going to say that. That's a horrible thing to say. Yeah, I would love for everyone that's in Ottawa to be able to come here and play locally, because it's just a different energy, right? When people are around the table, it's so bizarre to be down here all day by myself, trying to look at a camera and play a game. And then I look at the players here and doing the stream. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's weird.
It's a different, it takes a different headspace to make it effective. And it's more work than just having 6 people around a table. Justin had a question. I trampled on him earlier.
It's okay. I think I'm a little delayed, and that's been showing a little bit in the episode. But one of the things that I wanted to mention is, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, but one of the best ways to get a hold of you and understand more about the show is to go to www.crucibleoffate.com. We just put the little banner here. I'm going to show what the website looks like here. Do you have what it takes to be a D&D champion? I take the little banner up so you can see the win a little bit better. So you can see, right, there's a button right there on like apply to play, video of how to win $1,000, Crucible of Fate. You can get into to the social media, and I assume that there's a Discord link from here, or do you get that once you've applied to play?
I typically give it to people once they send in their application, but it's also in every video description that we put out on YouTube, how to join the Discord server.
Right.
Same with YouTube. If you type in Crucible of Fate, I think I'm actually like my YouTube handle is at Crucible of Fate, and same with Instagram. It's like Crucible_of Fate, and same with Twitter. But yeah, you can link to all of that from the website.
Yeah, so a lot of times, since you have that central location, that's the easy one-stop shop to find you. I mean, again, YouTube is one of the big ones. So if you look up Crucible of Fate on YouTube, I know I did, I know Dan just did, and we both subscribed. So you got +2 subscribers from tonight, David. And what that'll do, if you look up Crucible of Fate, like it automatically kind of search completed it for me and said Crucible of Fate D&D, Crucible, and I mean, it's easy to click on that and it pulls right up along with a lot of your episodes. So whatever SEO you're doing on YouTube is working. So that's good.
Cool. Good. Yeah, that's good to hear.
I had the exact same experience. It auto-completed for me. Google auto-completed. So that's great.
Yeah, that's a good sign, I guess.
Yeah, we'll take it. Yeah,
so we want to encourage everybody to go check out David. David, we're going to invite you to our Discord server as well, so you can make the case to several of our very involved RPGers. We've got a lot of real vets in our server, so I can think of a few of our guys, Dan, that would be really interested, like Casey. I imagine, Jason, yourself, myself would be interested. I could see Jim being into this, there's a couple other guys that we definitely have in there that would be very interested in doing a competitive D&D because it's different. And what I think is interesting, and I think this is why it works, David. This is my opinion. After listening to all of you, this is why it works. You have encouched the competitive nature within the story. So the story is what gives the fig leaf, the veneer that, yes, we are competing, but this is like a contest within the story. And so it's not, it doesn't feel like the real gloves have come off. It's the story gloves have come off. And, your characters and your PCs are able to go in there and still play the role and say, like, the guy that said, we're charging you with this, he gets to play that veneer of like, I'm doing this contest and I'm going to win because this guy needs to come to justice. So you're giving the players that social approval of doing a competitive game because that's what the story is dictating. Had you just said we're doing competitive D&D and you're going to fight it out, I don't know that people would be having as much fun or polite as they would be.
Yeah, I think you're right. And several times I've had to kind of have a bit of a prequel to my ads that says, look, it's competitive, but it's not just a battle royale. Sure, that's in there, but it's all about the story that's going to be generated within each episode. And then as the rounds progress, and with all of them, like all of the monsters have a backstory and some of them are very tragic. And so you might not know how you want to deal with the monsters as you go through. And I just think, like Vox Machina is an amazing cartoon based on their live play. But I think when we get to the end of Crucible of Fate and there's 6 people left alive out of 120, they all have gone through some stuff. And whatever happens at the end, it's going to be an epic tale that I would really like to have animated. And I think it's perfect because each little game is only 30 seconds of game time. So you can just pop that up and it'll just be action with a really neat story built into it. And Thurmgold is such a creepy jerk too that he's kind of a nice balance to it all.
Well, we're excited to jump into this big time. I'll speak for Justin. I know Justin well enough to know that we're both excited to check out some of these episodes and start checking out your application link.
Good. Yeah. And if you guys have any questions at all, just, send me an email or hit me up on Messenger, and I'm happy to answer anything. And yeah, once again, just super appreciative for you guys taking the time to have me on the show.
Thank you so much for coming on here, David. We really appreciate it. If, again, anybody has questions, we're going to have links down in the YouTube description. You can also check out the links in your podcast description of the episode that will link to crucibleoffate.com. You can also hit up David on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go check him out there. And come join us in our Discord as well. Well, hopefully you'll be able to connect with him and ask any questions if you'd like to do that too. But in the meantime, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you sticking around. And David, once again, thank you so much for coming on. It's a very interesting idea, and we wish you the best.
Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Have a good night, everybody.